where we interview interesting people doing interesting things, where you can expand your connections, your community. Kindness is cool and smiles are free. And let's get this party started. And it's another beautiful day for the Pirate Broadcast. And we interview interesting people doing interesting things. And I just want to remind everybody, a little housekeeping effort here, that you can always subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel, over on Facebook, LinkedIn, or even follow us on Twitter if you'd like. You know, we want to make sure that this community grows and excels and has the opportunity to meet new people and make new connections and start a conversation. And today we have Dr. Jeremy Weisz on the Pirate Broadcast, sharing some nuggets of knowledge. And we're going to be talking a little bit about podcasting, about business, and a few things that you might want to be involved and engaged in. And welcome to the party here. How you doing,
Thanks,
Jeremy?
Russ. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It makes me just like wonder, just why the Pirate Broadcast. You probably talk about it. I don't have to watch another episode to know why it's Pirate Broadcast. Very intriguing.
Well, there's a couple of layers to that statement. And one of the main properties of a pirate broadcast is that you don't have permission. And if the FCC in the early days of radio found a broadcast, sharing information over the airwaves without a license, you were considered a pirate broadcaster. And there were many offshore, they had high power towers in Mexico broadcasting to the US, AM radio, early AM radio days. And it was one of these ideas that you're kind of a pirate, you're just going out there. You don't need no permission needed. You don't need any permission. You're just going out to do that. And the internet has allowed us and afforded us the opportunity to actually do that real time right now. So you are now the media.
Yeah. As a fellow podcaster, I just can't help myself asking questions, Russ. Sorry.
And for those that don't know Jeremy, he is a podcaster, a longtime podcaster, and he's part of the podcasting crew from way back when. And so that's a great question. When did you get involved in podcasting? When did you pull the mic up and say, "Hey, I'm going to start sharing some information"?
Yeah, it was 2008, actually. 2008. And I'm trying to remember like the original, like why I started it. But I found it to be, I love giving to my relationships. And so I found it to be an amazing way to give to my relationships and to, as you realize, like you get to profile other people's thought leadership, and people love to share what they're doing. And I knew a lot of interesting people. So, and it was intoxicating. You get to talk to people about what they're working on and they're excited about. So the first version of Inspired Insider podcast started in 2008. And then I reached out to Andrew Warner. I actually wanted to interview of Mixergy. He was one of the first really like interview podcasts out there, and I reached out to him to interview him. We got to talking. We really had a lot of fun chatting. And so I became the producer there, and was with doing work with them for 6 years.
Andrew's been doing it for a while, and he's a fairly interesting character himself.
So but continued on just interviewing amazing people, and it's a lot of fun, and made a lot of amazing, great relationships through it.
Oh, I think we both share that that idea that having a podcast is one of the best ways to start a conversation with somebody and get engagement in areas of business that you would not necessarily have access to all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a door opener, and it's a great conversation starter. So what are some things that you have noticed over the last 10 years, 12 years of podcasting that has evolved and changed that we might want to start paying attention to?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's gotten so easy over the years. We always say that, but the technology now makes it really easy, because the biggest question, Russ, I get is, what equipment should I use? How do I get downloads and subscribers? Like those are the biggest questions I get when we, at Rise 25, and we help people with their podcast. And so people are asking me these questions. They've been asking that questions for a decade, and it's very simple. Like, so I'll just answer that question. You've probably talked about this before. It's like you need Zoom or, StreamYard or some other platform to stream it, and a USB mic, and that's it. Like the USB mic does not have to be fancy. This was $100 on Amazon, like whatever, 10 years ago. I have another one, an ATR 2100 or whatever the latest version is. It's like $70, and you're ready. Now, the biggest thing is, really focusing in on what's important, and focusing in on what's important is, who are you profiling? Who are you going to have on? And also, not trying to do all the pieces yourself. Ideally, it's good to know something, but especially, there's a lot of different people. We work more with B2B businesses. So like we want them focusing on their business and not focusing on all the other stuff. But so I suggest, you learn enough to be dangerous, but don't necessarily try and do it all yourself, because your time is valuable focusing on whatever craft you have. But I think the biggest thing is over the 10 years, things to look out for. The funny thing is it's still emerging. Now it's becoming more of a mainstream word, but it's still emerging. And a lot of people don't do it or don't listen to podcasts or have not heard of podcasts still. So there's still a lot of room for growth. People think, oh, it's saturated, or some people, because they're just in that network. And so it seems like it is, but it's really not, if you compare blogs,
it shows up in their feed.
Yeah. If you compare blogs, the number of blogs to the number of podcasts, I don't know what the number is, but it's astronomically bigger with blogs. You'd be like, oh, I'm not going to start a website because there's all these other websites out there. That sounds crazy, but the equipment, and that's a big one people ask, and it really hasn't changed that much, Russ. And I don't know what you use. Like I use the same exact mic for 10 years. This one, I recommend the same one now. It's the Yeti, the Blue Yeti. You get it for like $120 on Amazon. They probably raised the price because of the pandemic, and people are buying a bunch of mics for the house. But beyond that, it's not that different.
No, not at all. In fact, I would argue that because of the ease of access and the ease of use, even if you wanted to just test drive a podcast out, Spotify bought Anchor a few years ago. And so, firing up an Anchor app on your phone, the new phones nowadays have fairly decent, actually quite quality microphones for the most part. In a quiet space, you could jump in your closet and record a nice video on your phone on a tripod or something on a shelf and create something that's pretty amazing nowadays. And I'm not saying that's what everybody needs to do. However, I think it's really about, discovering the process that you enjoy working with. Not everybody thinks they need a podcast because everybody else is doing a podcast, and that's not necessarily true. It's just the same with blog posting. There's multi-millions of blog posts out there, and you just have to enjoy it, and you have to do it for yourself and understand, hey, this is the way I want to process this information and deliver it to the community.
That's a great point, Russ, because here's the thing. I hate writing. I don't like writing. My background's in biochemistry. Okay. I never got into writing. And so the thought of writing a blog post a week or 2 blog posts a week just makes me want to crawl into a ball. All right. And so, but over the past 10 years, I've produced almost 2 episodes a week for 10 years.
Yeah.
And like, that's 2 blog posts, that's 2 that's channels is going on iTunes, Spotify, Google. Well, Spotify is recent, but Google Play, Stitcher, but 2 blog posts a week. If you asked me to write 2 blog posts a week, that would never, ever happen. So you're right. You want to choose a medium that you love, that you enjoy, but that's also not super time consuming.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm
that's
not a
really
huge fan of editing. So I went to live stream, and, I've been at podcasting and editing and I've helped start hundreds of podcasts. And the challenge that a lot of people run into is like, how do I start? What equipment do I need? And then you move into the how do I brand it? And then you move into how do I build it? How do I grow it? And so it's those things that you have to say, okay, well, like yourself, 2 podcasts a week for 10 years. That's a huge body of knowledge that you've been able to share and deliver to your community.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's authentic, and that's another good thing about the podcast medium. It's authentic conversations. And so I was listening to a podcast the other day, Russ, I won't mention the name of it, but it was so overly produced, like it got annoying to me. I was like, just let me listen to the conversation. Like they're
Yeah.
cutting it, they're chopping it. So I agree with you. For Inspired Insight, I don't cut anything out of it.
Yeah.
Actually, so I remember one episode, there was a bee flying around, and the person was like, they almost got stung, and I thought it was hilarious. I mean, it was hilarious. They didn't get stung. That's why it was funny, but it was just funny. I didn't cut it out, and I was like, oh, they were swatting around at a bee, but I thought it was just leave it in. Who cares?
Yeah.
You
Just
know?
leave it in. Just leave it in. And the reality is Jeremy, we are all storytellers at the heart of our DNA. And so being able to craft these stories and be able to share them, I think is really a gift to the universe. And, it's a legacy that we can leave behind, and it's always going to be there. And one of the things that I think people fail to understand when they start a podcast is they think that if they get the right guest on, it's going to blow and explode their podcast. And if they have the right production or the right intro or the right image, it's going to blow up, and they're going to be, the next Joe Rogan or something like that. And I think that needs to kind of move away out of the industry, because it's really a personal story about how the process is built, and the love of the process, I think, is really what the focus needs to be on. Because a business owner, if you're doing B2B like yourself, there's a lot of opportunity to start a conversation with your ideal audience.
Yep.
And develop and nurture that and build relationships that far exceed the numbers. I mean, you can't even measure the value of that. And I think that's what people need to really understand when it comes to podcasting and creating content.
Yeah, I mean, that is the number one thing, in my life, and probably people would agree, is relationships. And whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's whatever it is, relationships, people who have done what you want to do, or, people in your tribe and community for that. And I joke around and say, like, almost everything in my life, like my relationships, almost everything, good things come back to a podcast. Like John Corcoran and I became business partners because of podcasting. We were introduced because we were both podcasting at the time. And that's, we did an event in San Francisco together because we didn't know each other, and just did it on a whim because of podcasting. A lot of my best friends, I've gone on family vacations with people because of the podcast. So you're right. It is priceless, like the relationship you can have. So when people ask, how do I get down to subscribers? If you're trying to be the next Joe Rogan, that's maybe important. But listen, if you go back to his hard work and what he did, his body of work, he traveled and did comedy shows. He was, the announcer at the UFC. He did a lot of things to build his audience. It wasn't just showing up and doing podcasts. He did a lot of other stuff and hard work to build his audience to what it is. It wasn't, like you said, one interview that he did with someone that blew him up. Maybe people look at that now, but it's like an overnight success after 20 years in the making, right? And when we're working and strategizing with people through Rise 25, it's, especially for a B2B business, you, even if you got 1 million downloads, I say, what are you going to do with that? Like, it doesn't really matter to you as a B2B business. What matters is your relationships in that industry, and giving to those relationships in that industry. And that's what it's about.
Well, it also, one of the things that I want to point out to everybody, and I want to kind of have you expand on, is the ability to grow your authority in a subject matter. If you're talking about a subject, and I could point out, podcasters all day long on certain subjects, in the industry. And it's really about knowing and sharing and developing and delivering information on a subject in a niche that really builds authority and visibility in that niche. And there are famous people that no one knows because they're in a niche. And I think that's an area that needs to expand in this idea of podcasting.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that's one of the first things I recommend brainstorming in is what niche or what, again, like the beautiful thing about doing a podcast is you can change, you can iterate. People think they need to have it all figured out in the beginning. Russ, I remember when I first started, I thought I was going to be the foremost podcast for productivity. I love productivity, 80-20. I love, being able to leverage time. And so I was like, yes, I'm going to have the foremost podcast on productivity. After 5 episodes with some of the biggest experts in productivity, I was like, okay, they keep saying the same thing. I got it. I'm shifting to another one. And so I tell people, you don't have to have it figured out. You can experiment. Yeah. I've gone and done, maybe 100 interviews in CPG companies and e-commerce companies, and over 100 interviews with direct response copywriters and marketers. So you can, like you said, anything that's of interest to you, but make sure it serves, what you're working on, whatever you're working on, the main goals. You can be known, and, it's not like you are the authority necessarily, but like you become known with the people who are the authority. And you, by the way, after doing 100+ interviews in direct response, and I do a lot of research, I may do 5, 10, 15 hours of research. So, I've done a lot of research. You actually you become somewhat of an expert when you research it and you start to use it in practice, and I do use that stuff. But so I think it's a great point, and you can go in and experiment with different niches.
Yeah.
Like right now I've been interviewing top VCs just because I found that to be really interesting. I had a VC on and I found the conversation was interesting. And so I was like, cool, like I'm going to actually dig deeper into this realm and, see what else is out there.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do. I want to share something interesting also with, Gabriel's in the house. I'm not sure if you know Gabriel yet. He's a live streamer, amazing individual that everyone should know. Good morning, Gabriel. Thank you so much for being here. Wendy's in here. Good morning, Pirates. Welcome, Dr. Jeremy. Wendy's a force of nature as well that I think everybody should know. Kathy Spooner. Good morning, Kathy. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I love switched over to YouTube. LinkedIn stopped working. What is up with LinkedIn? I don't know. Like, come on, LinkedIn. Come on. I can tell you a story. I could get distracted. I'm not going to go there today. Okay. I love LinkedIn, and their LinkedIn Live stuff is not always as well as you could be. It's all about finding your voice and conveying your message. That's absolutely consistently true, Gabriel. To me, Wendy says, to me, there is a selfie podcast where we go it alone, and then there's the interview podcast. Booking guests and doing the research for a great convo seems daunting. Is that how you find it? That's how you discover it?
You know what? No, actually. I mean, it can be, but like, here's the thing. What I would say is maybe then you don't have the right guest. Because if you have the right guest and you're super interested in that guest, it's not daunting, right? And so that's a sign to me if that maybe I just don't have the right guest on. If the research seems daunting.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's ways to shortcut research also. Like you don't have to be like me and do 5 or 10 hours of research per guest. If they have a book, I like to listen to it. But listen, you could have an interesting conversation by looking at their about page, looking at their LinkedIn, listen, to be honest, the best conversations go when you do research. I remember when I interviewed Wim Hof, right? I don't know if anyone's heard of Wim Hof, but he's the Iceman. What's that? Yeah. He has the Guinness, 20 Guinness Book of World Records or whatever it is for cold exposure. And I did like 20 hours of research because he's been interviewed so many times. Those are the toughest ones because I didn't want to ask the same questions. I wanted to be interesting, but I was really interested in what he was doing. So that didn't seem daunting to me. So, but you can shortcut it as well. And you don't have to go crazy. Like I could look on your LinkedIn page and find some interesting things. Oh, you were a history major, but now you're a pro athlete. Like that's interesting, or whatever it is. So you could always find something interesting with a short, a little amount of research also.
And sometimes you can find a lot of interesting things just through conversation.
Yeah. And then Gabriel, I don't think it was Gabriel who mentioned something really interesting, which, finding your voice. And I think, people say, well, there's so many podcasts out there. I don't want to be like everyone else or whatever it is. Some people say that. And I say, listen, you're not like everyone else. So if you start a podcast on, like, let's say there's 10 other podcasts on e-commerce and you start an e-commerce podcast, yours is going to be different just because you're different. So, you don't have to try and be different. Like you're just right, Russ. I mean, you're different. So you will end up going in a direction that leads you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because it's just like slap tags. Actually, Sherry Lolly, it feels like coffee talk with my buddies when it's live.
It's true.
And it's just like, what kind of goal do you have for it? And for me, it's like, hey, I just want to share and highlight a few people that I like and enjoy being hanging around with, or someone that I find interesting that I would like to know a little better. I invite them onto the podcast and we have a conversation just like this. And it's like, if you've ever been in a coffee shop or a restaurant and you're hearing a really interesting conversation nearby, it's like one of those things that's like, you could listen to our conversation all day, and you might even want to replay it. You might want to play it again. So, that's the thing is, and then Howard Kaufman says, Howard, good morning. How are you doing? Hope you're well. Nurture is such a meaningful word. And I think that's really true, because Donnie Ray says, good afternoon, sir. Thank you, Donnie Ray. Good afternoon to you. And I think it's really about what kind of emotional feeling do you want to deliver in the podcast? What emotion do you want to trigger? What is the attraction factor? What is the thing that's going to bring people back to the table and say, hey, that was great, I want more? And so how do you communicate that to business owners that are really on the run, moving forward, and they're too busy to really stop and pay attention half the time?
Yeah. You mean as far as people say, well, it takes a lot of time to do it?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah. I mean, listen, it depends on the goals. Like when we're working with and talking to B2B businesses, I say, well, are you too busy to talk to your best relationships? Are you too busy to talk to your best referral partners who send you a lot of business? Are you too busy to talk to your best clients that you have? Mm-hmm. I mean, the answer should be no, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So and by the other thing I say is, well, you should already be having those conversations. If you're not, you should be having those conversations. So when people give me the argument, well, I'm too busy. Well, are you too busy for your best relationships?
Yeah.
Right. And the answer should be no, obviously. Right. And by the way, I tell people you're already doing it. You're already having these conversations. So you might as well make them go further. Yeah. Like we could have this conversation on a phone without recording it. Uh-huh. And then, there are some lessons that people will get from it, and we have an engaging conversation with people. So it can never happen unless you actually put it out there.
Yeah, put it out there. So the one question, I want to wrap up, and I know you have lots of things going on in your world, and I know the one question I get asked all the time is like, okay, and I want to dive into this a little deeper. How do I grow my podcast? How do I grow? How do I get more exposure? How do I build on it? And I have my own thoughts about that. And I think you can imagine what those are. However, as a podcaster for years in developing this, what are your thoughts and what are your suggestions and recommendations to your clients?
Yeah. I mean, that's not what I focus in on, really. So when people ask, how do I get subscribers, downloads, how to grow my podcast? I think it's the wrong question to ask, for depending on who you are, right? For me, the right question is more, who are the relationships you want to give to? That's the question I ask. And it's about consistency. Listen, if you want to grow your audience, it's consistency. And what I always look at is giving to people. And so I'm not looking to grow my own thing. I'm looking to grow other people's stuff. So if I'm looking to help them and help them grow their stuff and post on LinkedIn or Facebook in my podcast about what they're working on, what they're doing, are they going to be sharing it because they're proud of it and they want to share what I'm sharing, what they're doing? Of course. So instead of focusing on myself, I'm focusing on that person and helping that person grow what they're doing. And when you do that, I don't know. I used to listen to audio cassette tapes, rest of my car, of the Zig Ziglars of the world. And Zig Ziglar would always say, you get what you want when you help enough people get what they want. And so it's really focusing on helping people get what they want. And so that's really what it's about. It's about relationships, giving to your relationships. And, like you said before, you're not going to have one episode that blows, because you have one guest that blows up. It's not going to happen. And sometimes, funny thing is, you could have a big guest and the person who's got a small niche audience guest is going to share it and get way more exposure for you than a big guest even. So you just don't know where it's going to come from. And so that's really, it's not even a question I think about really about just, I think about giving to people and who are the people I want to give to, and the rest will come with consistency.
Consistency over time is really what it's all about. I think there's a huge misconception about what it takes to actually produce and show, and busy people, if they need help, they want help, they enjoy help, they can contact someone like you or I. And there's a lot of help and assistance out there in growing a podcast or growing a broadcast or a live stream or even blogging. There's help out there. There's no shortage of help and information. So, and it's really about, who do I get along with? Who do I resonate with, and how can I help them? And when you pour value back into your network, it always seems to come back. And I know that's my experience, and I suspect it's yours as well.
Totally. Yeah. So, but that is the most common questions. How do I grow? But let's start with one person, like help one person get their message out there and help them grow. And it will just over time happen. It's not like a push button, easy button solution,
Nobody's listening.
Or if you're a paid traffic expert, you could probably shortcut that, and start driving a lot of traffic and money to episodes. But most people, that's not going to happen. That's not worth it even.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So I want to say good morning, Angie Schumann. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having
I love the little skeletons.
Day. Yeah. It's like
she's representing
the pirate broadcast. Yeah. So the pirates are out there. Kathy Spooner says, helpful discussion. Thanks for the ideas, information, and inspiration. Thank you so much. Helping others is the best way to help yourself. I love that. So what's next for Dr. Jeremy and the crew over at Rise 25? What's taking place? What's on your horizon?
Yeah, I mean, really, we're just Rise 25. We're just heads down, helping B2B businesses run and launch their podcast, so it makes sense for their business. And like we already talked about, focus on the best relationships and not worrying about getting huge audiences, and that's not the focus. The focus is, how does it serve the business and relationships, and that's it. So, John and I, we have a video on our Rise 25 page of us bantering like an old married couple. John.
Yeah.
And so people can check that out if they're interested. But that's really what we're focusing on.
Well, I suggest everybody go check out Rise 25 if you're interested in nurturing relationships through podcasts and actually monetizing your podcast. There's some ideas out there that I know we didn't get to. We'll have to look forward to it on another show and another episode. And thank you so much for being here. I love the opportunity to connect and catch up, and it's been a while, so I thought it would be nice to be able
to
kind of evolve this show. And also, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the audience and the community. And if you're not connected, get connected, reach out, say, hey, Russ sent you. Russ told me to connect with you. So reach out to Dr. Jeremy and let him know that you're a pirate. And now that he's a pirate, it's a lot.
I'm always open to questions. So if you have questions, you could message me on LinkedIn or wherever. So
yeah. I'm sure you could be found after 10 years of podcasting. There's no doubt that you're
somewhere. Yeah.
Somewhere you'll be found and everything. So everyone, it's a pleasure. It's always a great time. And for the Pirate Broadcast, smiles are free. Kindness is cool. And I want you to enjoy the day. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining the Pirate Broadcast. If you found this content valuable, please like, comment, and share it across your social media channels. I would love the opportunity to help others grow in their business. The Pirate Syndicate is a platform where you show up, we produce the show. It's that easy. If you want to be seen, be heard, and be talked about, join the Pirate Syndicate today.